What's up, people, and welcome to another episode of ASAP, your Afrikan Social Activism Playbook. I am T, joined as always by Michelee. How you doing today, sis?
I'm pretty good this morning. Well, this afternoon. Oh my God. I said when I came back from the weekend, I would not say morning. Good
It's all
morning to
good.
you, but I am doing very well this afternoon. I had a much needed pedicure today. Had to, indulge in a little more self-care. So I'm
Yeah,
feeling
I
real good and
always
refreshed.
I always forget how much of the day that you're already into, how much
Yes.
stuff you probably already done before by the time we get on here. So that's
Mhm.
dope. I haven't
Yeah.
really done much this morning. I was just prepping for the show and making sure I got everything done, setting things
Right.
up. I had a pretty good weekend having that, you know, having this show be Monday through Fridays is dope because you got that Monday to really prepare and kind
Yeah.
of get yourself into the week. So
Mm,
I think that's definitely necessary. But
yeah.
okay, so we hope that you guys who are watching are doing good. Let us know how
Mhm.
you guys are doing in the comments too. The check-in is for all of us just to see
Yeah.
how everybody is doing. So yeah, moving on into the first topic, and we have a very cool thematic show today because I think that every single topic, whether it's modern or from the past, have very close ties with one another. And that's what we try to do every episode. But I think this might be the most closely thematically tied
Yeah.
episode
So
thus far.
pause.
Whoop.
Let me just tell you how excited I am to talk about everything we're about to get into today.
Okay,
Like,
cool, cool,
I'm
cool.
excited. I'm excited. Some of my favorite people we're about to talk about, favorite subjects. So,
Oh yeah, right. I
yes.
forgot. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I got you. So
Okay.
we're gonna start off with straight truth, no chaser, as always. And we're going to talk
Mhm.
about police reform. Now, police reform has been a topic of conversation for, you know, decades.
Right.
But now, finally, you know, people are coming around to understanding, especially listening to the Black community about how we feel in our communities and how we are policed.
Mhm.
And, you know, whether those words on the side of the car that say protect and serve are actually what we feel when we see those blue lights pop up behind us, when we
Mhm.
see them even coming to us when we call them for
Mhm.
assistance, we may still feel threatened. And it's just, so police reform is something that is a highly touted topic of discussion right now because we definitely need it in the realm of the Ahmaud Arbery case, and even though that wasn't police, it was an ex-police officer, but the fact that the police held on to that information, they didn't arrest the people who did that, and then
Mhm.
in the cases of the people who they actually do brutalize and murder, that they just walk away from the situation.
Right.
Justice for Breonna Taylor.
Mhm.
It's it's something that must always be on our brains. And then seeing George Floyd and seeing Rayshard Brooks, and then even in Atlanta, where I am, for the protests of George Floyd, there were Atlanta police officers who took some college students who were just driving near the protest
Right.
and
Right.
brutalized them. Fortunately, our mayor immediately fired those people, so we didn't have to like protest to get those people fired. And then Keisha Lance Bottoms just came out and actually she just came out with like some reforms that she is trying to implement.
Okay.
And I had a video based on them actually interviewing her on the news, but we'll
Mhm.
figure out the technicalities of how to share that with you guys as the audience. But
Right.
I'll just read it to you. So the mayor wants the city to create guidelines that would allow officers to intervene when other officers use unreasonable force. And and that is dope, right? And then we have she wants to curb retaliation against officers who intervene. And so that is definitely something that people don't talk about a lot, because we say, oh man, if there are good police, then we need to, the police that exist need to actually step up and say something. But in the cases that they do, sometimes they get brutalized or harmed or risk their lives and their careers. And so a lot of that,
they label it whistleblowing.
They call it snitching within the police department, which is baffling because they're the ones that are supposed to be budding out crime. So how can you be a snitch if you're a police officer?
Who's going to police the police?
Exactly. So, today we are streaming on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch for the first time. So we have some people tuning in on Twitch. So how you doing, brother from Pakistan? Yeah, we definitely need to stop racism. So we appreciate your view. So curb the retaliation against officers intervening. That is a huge point. I'm so glad that was in there. So then she wants to develop techniques to de-escalate conflicts, because I'm not sure that our police understand the concept of de-escalation. In the past few events and most of my interactions with the police, it almost seems like they are there to bring more tension into the field. Like when they arrive, I don't feel safer. Right? Like you can be speaking in a regular voice and they're like, they're telling you to calm down when you're at the calmest that you could possibly be in any situation that has to involve the police. Right. So if the police are involved, it's already a heightened situation from the beginning, or else they wouldn't be there. And then you try to keep a level head and keep calm, and you are being told to calm down by the person who's yelling and screaming at you. Even if they have guns pointed at you, they're telling you to calm down. And it's just ridiculous. So teaching them, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it seems like in a lot of cases, it seems like when the police show up, and especially if it's a Black person, and more specifically a Black man, it seems like it's like they're on their agenda to try to make you react. Like I've seen, I've been in situations, with people, with Black men, and have seen the interaction. And it's like, no one is challenging you. We're within our rights asking you, for if any questions are asked, it's like, we know that that we're able, allowed to ask these questions. And it's like, they get so upset, and it's like they, at that point, it's like they have it out to try to make you react. You know how they always call resist. They always want to say someone is resisting, and it's like it can be simply for asking, what did I do, or why is this necessary? So it's troubling, because I could just imagine. I know it's hard enough for me, but I can only imagine for a man to be talked to so disrespectfully, and and you can't do anything about it. You can't even challenge that person. It's like, just respect me as a person, and it doesn't seem to be that a lot of times.
And that definitely is not something that most of the officers that we encounter actually feel like they know how to. They feel like when they put that uniform on, that they're no longer human. And they just lose all sense of respectability of exactly what the job is supposed to be. I would love for people to just talk about what actually is the role of the police and how they are supposed to actually engage with the community. So de-escalate conflicts. And then she wants to revise the evaluations of officers, which would disincentivize certain arrests and incentivize alternatives. So as we know, sometimes police officers have a quota on how many tickets they give. And so they'll be pulling people over for ticky-tack things. And also there's certain incentives that they get for arresting people. And we've seen officers plant drugs and do all these types of crazy things to people. And so actually incentivizing alternatives to arrest, like promoting prevention of crime, right? What a thought. Like you would think these things are like brand new. So like what are your thoughts and what are your interactions on that part of, you know, the police being incentivized by doing certain things and having alternatives to arrests and tickets that they would be incentivized by doing?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that, like you said, these are things that it's like, is this not common sense? You know, these are things that should have been happening. At the same time, I have, it was something, maybe a documentary or something I was watching with police officers and, you know, former police officers talking about just their roles, you know, like duties, you know, responsibilities on the job, they keep increasing, you know, so they're in charge for, you know, you have an animal on the loose, people call the police, you have, you know what I mean? So there is so many different responsibilities that they have now in their roles. And I think that, I mean, they're human beings too, you know what I mean? And so with all of that, it's giving them too much power and control, you know, over every little situation. And if they're in that mindset, like I'm just trying to think, if it was me in that type of role, in that type of, you know, job, is it going to be easy to switch on and off? You know what I mean? Like I'm this person, I'm responding in this way. So I think it's definitely going to be on the, I don't know what level, like, you know, is it on the city? Is it on the police department itself? Is it, you know what I mean, to regulate, you know, like regulate the duties and stuff, you know, better for them, and definitely not like get that quota thing out of here. I heard people like try to deny it, but those types of things have been confirmed. Like people talk about it all the time. Yeah, like
I mean,
we know, we see it all the time.
Across the nation, we've seen it in different states. Exactly. So, I mean, it's just funny because even with that, with the confirmations, you see denials. So that just brings even more distrust in us believing anything that they're saying. Like, just tell the truth. And so the last thing that the mayor of Atlanta has suggested is creating an online dashboard with ongoing use of force data and other police records. So like having it be public record, and maybe having that dash cam footage be uploaded somewhere where, you know, just your everyday citizens can see, okay, these are examples of normal interactions with the police and citizens. And these are, go ahead.
No, yeah, because I was going to say, when we get into these, like the problem really presents itself like when we talk about, like, we just have it's like a distrust, you know, between particularly Black and brown communities and the police. And it seems like when these conversations of Black Lives Matter and things are finally being discussed, people don't believe us. It's like, no, this is not our experience. You know, the police don't do that. And even if we don't talk about it every day, you know, because I know from growing up and where I grew up, and I'm used to seeing, you know, a lot of these people, everyone, you know, we're all used to experiencing that. And it's like we kind of taught to avoid confrontation. We just avoid, or you just go along with it. They might be illegally searching you, and people ask, why didn't you report it? It just seems to be the norm. And it's sad. We've been just conditioned to just go, because what's going to happen? You go tell on them, and then what are they going to do? That's more police being involved. They can feel the exact same. So
exactly. And then in the event of, like, I was watching a movie the other day. My wife and I were watching a movie, and this guy got up, was like, "Am I arrested?" Right. And then, you know, the officer didn't say anything and he walked out. I was like, that is not how that interaction happens in real life, especially not with Black people. Right. So I'm just happy to get out of the situation. I'm not going to have the police release me and then say, can I get your badge number? That's me staying there that much longer with them and having them get a whole nother attitude because they
Right.
know why I'm taking their name and badge number now.
Right.
And so maybe they'll hem me up again. I just want to get out of there as quickly as possible. Like I got drawn down on in a Target parking lot last August with 4 officers surrounded me with guns drawn. So I have to stay calm in the situation. I have to tell them exactly what was going on. I was in a parking lot. I walked up to a white sedan. I had a white sedan. It wasn't my car. My car was parked. Like it was a car between the wrong car and my actual car. And when the police saw me, I was actually in my car. But they still came down on me, arms drawn, like guns out.
Wow.
From all 4 sides, right? And so when I get out of that situation, even though, you know, they held me in a squad car for like an hour, right?
Wow.
Not being under arrest, just questioning me. And then they put me in handcuffs immediately and put me in a squad car with no seats. So I'm just kind of like sitting there all slanted and whatnot. But when I got out of that situation, I wasn't about to ask them, what's your name and badge number?
Right.
I was like, all right, let me go. I got out of there so fast. Like, let me just get home. Can I get home? I'm not even thinking about reporting them. I just want to get home safely. And that's it.
Let me ask you, like, what does that feel like? Because I could just imagine, like, for myself, I can say right now, I wouldn't know what to do, but I'm thinking I know I would be upset, but I think even before that, like afraid, you know, because what we've been seeing and what we, you know, a lot of times people experience it, you don't get a chance. You would be hurt or, you know, worst case scenario, killed. And it's not necessary at all. It's like, you know, they don't, like you said, they don't try to de-escalate. They don't actually properly investigate. And it's a video I want to bring it to your attention in case. I'll just say it now and then ask you later. So I just saw on my way home this morning, this afternoon, I saw a video of, I think Sean King shared it. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was a video recently. It was, I believe it was did they say it was California or somewhere? But someone called the police because they saw some boys being harassed or being attacked, right? The boys were black, you know, black young boys. And the police showed up and have rifles and guns, you know, pointed at the boys who the people called the police for. The police were supposed to show up and investigate, you know, find out what's going on. They automatically get out of the car, guns drawn on black minors who were being attacked. They ended up you can still see it. Fortunately, there were, you know, multiple people out recording it, you know, people who witnessed everything, and they're yelling, they're shouting at the officers, no, those are not the guys, you know, you have the wrong people. And it's the lady who called the police, I believe, and she's recording, or she's trying to talk to them, and she's like, I'm the one who called the police. Like, they were being attacked. You have the wrong people. And the police keep telling the people, get back, you know, get back, move out of the way. And still they never put their guns down. They started to arrest the boys. And it's like, you know, it's sad because you hear one black woman who's recording, she's yelling, like, you know, at the top of her lungs, like telling the boys, put your hands up, just put your hands up. I know you didn't, you know, basically like, I know you didn't do anything, you know, I know, you know, you're not in the wrong, but still just follow their commands, because we just don't know. And I could just imagine.
There's no time to be upset there in that moment. When it was happening to me, I couldn't go off. So like, your brain is going so many things at a time, right? You want to argue your case because you're innocent. You want to not be shot. You want to not be arrested. You want to not be beaten. And you want to not be blamed or accused of resisting, right?
Right.
So I had to just stand there in handcuffs and calmly state my case as they asked me the same question 5 different times the same way. And, you know, just inferring that I was lying from the beginning.
Right.
Making my logical statements try to seem as if they didn't make any sense. And it's just, and then also belittling me in by the tone of their voice, having a very insulting tone in everything that they were doing with the interaction, trying to make me break, right? Trying to telling me to calm down, but at the same time trying to poke me so that I'll give them a reason to arrest me or to do something else or to take it further. And fortunately, I know enough to know, especially with everything that's happening, like, no, you're not about to go me into that. I'm gonna stand here handcuffed and just be as calm as possible and repeat myself 80,000 times if I have to. I don't care, right? And so I don't even have time. I don't have time to be mad. I got too many people counting on me. Like I got to think about them. I can't think about my pride in that moment. Okay, I'm being insulted. Whatever. I'll answer the question again. Right? It doesn't matter in that moment. So I can't defend my honor in that moment. Right? I just have to make it past this moment. So like I said, even when everything was over, they took the handcuffs off. And then they told me, that's an honest mistake. I've made that mistake myself. Do you think I was about to say, then why did you do it? I was like, thank you. And I walked away. I was like, look, I'm not having this conversation with you after the fact. It's done. What's done is done. Look, get me home. I got home and I told my wife what happened. I told my brother, I told my mother, my father, and they were just like, can't believe that, what I'm saying, this happened to you. And, it was just crazy. But it is what it is. And then, it's just, yeah, man, it's just crazy. So with these reforms happening, so that's the mayor of Atlanta with those mandates that she's putting down. I love the teaching them to de-escalate. I love the fact that they are wanting to create this database where people can actually go in and make sure that we have access to see those interactions and be able to see what a normal interaction looks like versus what one that unnecessarily got escalated to, right? And then also having something in place that protects the officers who actually want to do right, who actually want to step in and stop the officers who may take it a little bit too far. Protect those officers who some would call snitches, some would call whistleblowers, which makes no sense in the context of the people who were supposed to be upholding the law. So, it's just a whole thing. But I've seen Kamala Harris come out with some reform ideas and some other people, like it's a talk where Governor Cuomo in New York, they're putting things in place. I know that, Minneapolis, they're actually putting some things in place. So it's a sign toward good things. I want to ask you a question while we're still on Straight Truth No Chaser about defund the police, because you alluded to them having too many responsibilities, right? And the police officers are being called for every little thing, which shouldn't be in their job description. We understand that. So when people are saying defund the police, what they are meaning by that is take away some of these unnecessary responsibilities and reallocate those funds toward departments and people who could better serve those situations. But for me, the defund the police moniker doesn't help in getting the support of police because they feel like they're being attacked. What's your stance on that?
On defund the police?
On the name and how, how it is perceived from people who already don't want to listen to you.
All right. I think I'm definitely on the side of defund the police because I've already thought of other solutions, different things, that will help the community, the people that they're supposed to be protecting and serving. And, I was listening to a discussion when people were talking about, like reallocating funds to like, social work and, in different people and organizations or something that would aid in, responding to some of the issues that police are normally called on nowadays. And I think that could definitely be effective. You can take away some of those, because what I hear, do you know how much the what is it, how much they get, the money, like the funds from the government or whatever, from the city to
like how I know it's a lot. I haven't looked at each budget, but it's crazy though. Yeah,
right.
It's more than education sometimes.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And so if we invested in other areas, that will help prevent a lot of the issues that they have to respond to, or another way where people can can get aid, in a less hostile manner. I think that would definitely be useful. But I think also a lot of them are feeling attacked because I think a lot of them are already underpaid from what I hear. And it's like, what is that movie? There was a movie. It was on like Crooked Cops. And I mean, it's so many of them, but it's so many movies like, involving crooked cops and stuff. But I remember it was one of them. They were talking like, it was basically like a new guy on the force. It wasn't like, not the one with Denzel, not Training Day, but it was another one.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, I don't know. But it was another one where they were talking about like how, like their salaries are not even good enough, to support their families, like if something happens or whatever. But basically, like a lot of people are not able to get a lot of things done, on their salary. But
yeah, I police officers be living in squalor.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying though. But if they, I don't know. I don't know what to say like about I think with funding is taking, they're also not giving more, like, because I know they do give a lot of money for like unnecessary like weapons that they use on citizens, like on just regular civilians. You're using like military grade weapons, and it's like that's not necessary at all, and unless it's for a specific, it's a motive behind
I support the idea around reallocating funds, right? And I wish there was a sexy way to say reallocate funds, because I believe in this case, when we're talking about understanding, so I know a lot of police officers, right? And I talk to them, and they're Black. So they understand the Black issues, and they understand that when they're in their car out of uniform, that they could be abused and stopped by other police officers, right? So they've identified that happens all the time. Police officers get killed by other police officers, Black ones do. And so it's just, I believe by saying defund the police, and then you have other people saying dismantle the police, that it doesn't do us any favors in the conversation of wanting the police to actually come to the table to listen, because we know how headlines and sensationalism in the news will report things. They will say defund the police, and they will interpret it or intentionally misinterpret it, right? And so then now it's us against them, even those of us who understand from the standpoint of the police that they're overworked and underpaid. And what defund the police is trying to say is don't overwork them, right? Give somebody else these duties that would better serve these actual situations and scenarios where a police officer shouldn't be called for, lost animals. A police officer shouldn't be called to step in for certain things. And so there has to be a better way to broach the conversation. Like everything that we do on this platform is about how to create the dialogue that's actually going to bring both necessary parties to the table to get the results. And saying defund the police isn't going to get us anywhere with them, because they feel threatened. They feel like we're coming after the police officers who are wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want them fired. We want them prosecuted. But to say that, or to allow the good thing that you want to be misinterpreted and not, have what you're, because what we all know is that people won't read beyond the headline. People actually don't read the article, right? So they're not even going to get to the second paragraph where you actually define what defund means, where it actually means reallocate. And we are actually coming into understanding that, okay, these people are overworked. I believe, and my solution is to make it more difficult to become a police officer.
Yes,
just start all the way over, right? And make it more prestigious.
They're not even trained for half of the things that they're called on to do. And it's like the process, and it's not to to say that, like they're not qualified to do, but really, honestly, you need, we have professions, you have people who study, like, especially to be dealing with people on the street, everyday, citizens. You have people with mental health issues. You have people in distress. You have people and if you don't know how to communicate with people, you cannot take that same, whatever attitude you have. And then mind you, when they put on a uniform, they are, as much as people want to argue against it, they are bringing their biases with them. They're bringing their personal views and opinions on who they are interacting with. They're bringing all of that with them. They are not able to turn that off. They're not even trained. They don't, even in their training, they're not trained to turn off. How can you even turn off, your personal thoughts and opinions on people who you're interacting with? So when they drive into and going around, our neighborhoods, patrolling our neighborhoods, they're seeing the enemy. You know what I mean? A lot of times,
because they don't live there.
Exactly. And
they
so
don't live in the communities. And I think one of those,
and I'm going in to get a suspect. They're all suspects.
It's like they're going to war, and they look at us as insurgents. And if you live in a certain place, you have more of an idea of how the community functions. You are more familiar with the people. You care more about, okay, how do the de-escalation becomes a factor just in that person's mind, because, okay, this may be a child that goes to school with my children. This may be just, a neighbor of mine. So I want to make sure that I know everything that's going on because I see you as a person, right? And so those things like that must be considered. And I think it should be one of the incentives of having police living in the community, or at least in the county. Most of the police I know don't even live in the county where they are officers. And it's like, how do you expect to be connected with the people or be fair or even have any type of empathy? Because you're going to, police in Fulton County, Atlanta downtown, and then drive all the way to Cobb County or, somewhere far off, Gwinnett. And even just the aesthetics look very different in those two different places. So you are already in a mindset of, okay, I'm driving into the jump, I'm going into the city, and you already are amped up in that way. So I believe that by rephrasing it and reframing the same idea, keep the exact same idea, keep the same framework, say it in a way that the police officers will come to the table and listen. Because if we really want police reform, we're going to need them to be a part of it, because they have to agree to it. They're going to be the ones that make those changes. We can say to the end of our breath that we want things to change, and we can, we put the pressure on our elected officials, but it's still within those departments. Like the mayor isn't inside the police precinct, right? The city council president isn't there with the police chief. They're not there every day. So we need direct communication with those people and a way to speak to them that they are going to want to come to the table. And it's not me being passive. It's not me being an accommodationist. It's me being logical and saying, if I'm results oriented, if I'm solution oriented, and I want this stuff done, then we got to talk to the people who are going to be involved in actually doing it. Because the mayor can come down with all the mandates, and then it's going to be like the police feeling like they're under attack by the mayor and by the citizens. And then they're going to do that stupid thing that the Atlanta police did, where they took like a weekend off and weren't answering calls. Like, this type of thing is something that happens because they are being misunderstood. We're being misunderstood, and nobody is actually listening. Everybody is in their feelings, and everybody is hurt, right? And even though we as the Black community are actually the ones dying in the street, we want to be heard. But at the same time, just like when I was hemmed up in the situation with the police, I couldn't at that time say, I'm going to argue with them in the way because they are insulting me and disrespecting me. No, I want to get out of this situation alive. So even though they're being unreasonable, I have to be 3 times as reasonable.
Right.
Because I understand the power and the authority that they have in this situation. So in the situation of wanting the reform, I have to know, okay, as a group of citizens, as people with an agenda, we have to make sure that that agenda is so clear and crisp that it cannot be misinterpreted, because we saw them compare Black Lives Matter to the Ku Klux Klan, right? We saw them try to turn the narrative of, when I first heard about the Black Panther Party for self-defense, first of all, the self-defense part is never added because they just shaved that part off. And then I heard them in comparison to the Ku Klux Klan. And this is like the mid-90s, right?
Yeah.
And you have Black people still buying into that narrative as well. And it was like, because we didn't control our own narrative, because we didn't have full access to what it is that, our own people did, and other people are able to dictate what it is that we know, then things kind of grow out of control. So in all of the hindsight that we have now, and we know that these things happen, we have to be very intentional about our verbiage, very intentional about the words that we use, the phrases that we use, to make sure that they cannot be misinterpreted. People just now coming around to the fact that Black Lives Matter isn't controversial.
Right.
Like, just now. Yeah.
It's insane. Just the fact that we're making it political. A lot of people are making it just political, and we're talking about human lives. We are talking about human lives. The
question
I'm
being,
confused.
To the people who would combat us, are we talking about human lives? Are they convinced that we're talking about humans?
Right.
Or are they convinced that
was going to be my question to you, though, because there are a lot of people, like from various discussions that come up, kind of related to this, related to police interaction and everything. It's a lot of people who get it. We know, like, common sense don't seem to be so common, but a lot of times people do actually get it. Like, there's no way at this point, if you are able to read and comprehend, certain material, like if you have been able to graduate,
reading
you should be able to. No, exactly. But I think even in situations where I agree with you with, kind of adding like a little sweet layer onto it for them to be able to digest. Like, let's just get them to swallow it, and let the medicine just work. I get that, and I totally agree with that. We do need to somebody needs to find ways. I think a lot of times we also waste a lot of energy and a lot of time focusing on trying to change people's minds and change their hearts, when sometimes the way to actually we're talking about being solution oriented. A lot of times we just have to get that legislation passed. We just have to. Do you think, I wanted to ask you, do you think it would be better, or how do you feel about more of us going out? Like I saw people asking, well, or saying, well, that's why more Black people need to be on the police force or something like that. I was gonna bring up, like, we see these scenes in like Boys in the Hood, and and whatever other movie, or in actual, real life situations, a lot of Black officers can have the same exact mentality, with seeing people as the enemy. It could just be based on, like how it could have been based on their personal experience, you know what I mean, dealing with certain people in certain communities. And so I'm not saying that my question is not, or I'm not making an assumption that like just putting a Black face on is going to fix it. I'm saying to get things changed, do we need to just strategize to get the right people in certain positions to change things? Yeah,
it's multiple layers to answer that, right? Because the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and a lot of the issues that were happening in the 60s and the 70s called for more Black people on the force. That was, one of the things that they called for back then, and it happened. But what we saw is, like you said, the scenes in Boys in the Hood, though, the Black officer who is trying to prove something to the white person that they are compromised, right? That I might be Black, but I won't allow that to compromise the job or my, respect for the work. And so I put force over my, my other parts of my identity. The officers from the situation that I was describing, it was 2 Black officers, 1 Latina lady, and somebody else. I couldn't really make out who the 4th person was, but the main people who I was in that treatment with was 2 Black police officers that were talking down to me in that way. I've had some of my worst encounters with Black police officers because they are trying to prove something to their white partner or whoever it is that they feel like they need to, be validated by. So I don't believe that on the surface of just having more Black officers that it will help. I believe having more Black people in the room definitely does help. I believe that having a citizen review board with real authority, that has real authority, where the police actually have to come and listen to their concerns. And when people have been reported to that citizen review board, that action is actually taken. They're not just there as something to pacify the people because of their presence, right? We have enough of the pacification of just symbols being present. And then I believe that, these incentives, like I said, having the incentives of the training, right? I believe that police officers should go through much harder training, because a police officer is an officer of the law, is an enforcer of the law. But in order for a lawyer to become that, they have to pass a bar exam. They have to, just to represent somebody in court, right? They have to go through a very arduous task to be a part of the legal system. And then judges have to go through being a lawyer and then having that experience, but before they can convict people and be a part of that, level of the legal system. And then we have certain people on the legal system that brings you into that courtroom that may have in certain places 8 weeks of training at a minimum. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense because they have the authority of people's lives in their hands. They actually have weapons, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that it gives the judge and the jury and the executioner. And that should not happen. It should not.
And it should be, I believe, what we should be saying is, make it more difficult to become an officer, and then like making the pay of that prestige go up. So it's harder to get, and it pays just like every other job. It takes a long time to become a doctor, and doctors, they get compensated for all of the work that they put in to go through all of that training. Lawyers, stockbrokers, you got to pass that Series 7, and if you don't, then too bad. And they make it almost impossible to pass because they want only a certain amount of people in those fields. But like in Atlanta, I remember a couple of years ago, Atlanta, the APD, Atlanta Police Department, had a shortage of officers. And so they had like billboards, they had radio commercials, advertising to, just try to ramp up the police department. And I don't believe that in a time that they were desperate for officers, that they were being very picky at who they chose, right? And so you don't even know if the actual standards were being upheld that they had previously. And it's just, ridiculous in that sense. So there are different ways to have this conversation. Like, I will say it again. I am not trying to say we need to appease them. When we get to the table, we're going to get to the table and be real. Yeah. But let's get them to the table first. We can't be so stuck on insulting them before we even bring them to the table. When you have the business meeting, when you have the business meeting, when you have the merger meetings between two big corporations, they're not going to be arguing with one another as they come to the consideration of the merger, right? But when they get in that boardroom, both sides are going to come ready to say, you're not going to take advantage of me. You're not going to take advantage of the other party. They're going to come with all of their documents in place. And those are some heated meetings, right? It's heated once you get to the table, though. You're already have agreed to meet. You've already agreed to have, even like with like organized crime and the mafia, before they go to war, they have a meeting. They say, okay, these are the terms. Okay, you don't agree to these terms. Then if all else fails, then we'll go to war. But in order for, everything to be protected, they're like, you can't kill that person because he's made in that family. We got to meet to make sure that all parties agree, right? And so if we're going to the police and we're the citizens and we can't even get them to the table, and we're already insulting them before we get there. Now, when we get to the table, I'll say it again, it's going to be a heated exchange, right? Because we got to get off our chest the way we feel as Black people in these communities that have been just dogged out. And then the police will say their piece and we will listen, and there will be compromise. So there is not a accommodationalist aspect to it. All I'm saying is be careful with what we say from the beginning, because they may never come to the table. We need to get them in the boardroom in the first place. And that's just
they're already cut off. Yeah,
exactly. Which we see right now. They're shutting themselves off. They're not even trying to listen to the logic. They have people speaking reasonably, and they're already shut down.
Yeah, but that's what, that's the thing though. We talk about just especially being just solution oriented. It's been long enough. We've been experiencing the same thing. We've been saying the same thing. We've had countless leaders, organizations, just regular civilians, everybody saying the same thing. Yep. Whether we've been people not believing us, whether, some of us are perceived to be too hostile when we're saying it, or, just whatever, we haven't been heard, or it hasn't been responded to properly. And I think it is, what I mean? Like when you, I think someone told me, someone told me about like how men communicate, to resolve issues. Something can be very heated, but you don't approach another man with hostility when you want to come down, because when you come to the table and you already hostile, then you're gonna meet a hostile, reaction to whatever you say, or it's like no words are gonna be heard. It's like, because I see your pose, I see everything, and and so you won't be heard. No one is gonna be heard. We're just gonna be coming to blows. And I think
exactly.
But I think sometimes in these cases, it's like people don't want to hear it. Like when we had to argue, Black Lives Matter, and people yelling it back at us, all lives matter. Some people don't want to hear it because they I think, like, that's what I'm saying. I think we underestimate people's intelligence sometimes and overestimate their compassion, because people we can explain. We have books, you have dissertations, we got speeches that you don't have to read anything. You can be illiterate and you can listen to what people are saying. You can see, like, all of us aren't lying. If you think we're lying about our experience, all of us, you telling me every one of us, even when you see it with your own eyes, we're still lying, or we're making it up. And I think sometimes, like I was talking about earlier, I think we waste a lot of time and energy trying to continuously explain when the person is not trying to actually understand. But I think we should give it a try. I think, but at the same time, like I said, I think we should definitely focus on getting the right people, at least, especially focusing on like voting. A lot of us don't like to, we don't believe in that system because it has been a lot of distrust and everything. So a lot of us don't believe in that system of voting, but I think it is, especially on the local level, because these are the people who you'll be interacting with. These are the people who will be speaking for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They'll be speaking for you. So you will want to know, you want to be able to kind of like, basically they're like our puppets. And it's like, you want to be able to pull a string. If you don't have a grip on a string, how are you going to, how are they going to hear? How are they going to speak for you, and represent you? So I think it's so many layers. Like you said, we need to take voting more seriously. We need to, it's just so many things.
The beautiful thing about it being so many layers is that there are people and organizations that are fighting on all of those levels, right?
Right.
And so
exactly.
We need to be aware and support one another.
Right.
And there's an organization that is addressing this aspect, the economic aspect. There's an organization that knows exactly how many funds are being allocated. There are organizations that know, all of the extra duties that are being given out to the police. There are organizations that know, that are actually talking about community policing and how that used to look and how it should look.
Right.
And, incentivizing living in the community on all of those levels. There are organizations doing the work. And so we need to be aware of them and support them. But we have heard the term from the time of Trayvon Martin to Mike Brown to Freddie Gray to Eric Garner up to Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, that these are like modern day lynchings, right? And so we know of the history, and a lot of people are mistaken and believe that Black people were being lynched during enslavement. The lynching actually didn't start until after we were free, because that's when we became a threat.
Yes.
When we were enslaved, we were property, we were a commodity, we were an asset because we were their free labor force. But once we actually could work for ourselves and create our own funds, then we started to be a threat. And our highlight reel today drives that home, because it's very interesting. In some of these aspects, I remember learning about them, but I didn't really remember the full grasp of it. So today's highlight reel is Ida B. Wells. And Ida B. Wells was a journalist, and
investigative journalist at that.
Exactly. Investigative journalist who dug deep, and this is like the 1800s that she's doing this. So just think about that. The 1800s, we have a Black woman journalist, which means she's literate, which means she's well written, And so we have to remember, and one of the aspects of why we do highlight reel is to just show our people and others, whoever's watching the show, just how far back our history goes. Like it's not all condensed in one decade or one time period. Black history is not some flat surface.
Right.
So anyway, Ida B. Wells, well-written, literate, investigative journalist who made her bones in spotlighting the realities of the lynchings of the South. What is your knowledge of Ida B. Wells? Share a little bit about her with the people.
Well, I know she was born into slavery. Very interesting. Born into slavery in Mississippi. And she, I mean, after coming, I mean, can you imagine that, first of all? Born into slavery. So she's seeing it fresh out. She's experiencing it, you know, firsthand. She goes into, you know, writing. She has, you know, writing for different newspapers. Writing a column in other newspapers, especially Black-owned newspapers, are showing her work. She's highlighting the lynchings, you know, the brutality against Black people, you know, newly freed, enslaved people, just in their everyday lives, and especially documenting, you know, these lynchings that's going on across the South and across the whole nation. So yeah, I mean, she was very brave, because a lot of times we didn't see a lot of women in the forefront speaking, you know, especially so, like you said, she was literate, you know, she was speaking so passionately about these things. She's an investigative journalist. She's speaking, you know, thoroughly about these situations, making everyone aware of it, about the horrors of what's going on with these lynchings with Black people across the nation. And she's not received by a lot of people. I know that she wasn't very well liked by a lot of people, even a lot of other people involved, you know, within the civil rights movement, as she was. But she was also respected, and you know, like held very high, like people like Frederick Douglass, you know, really respected her work. And yeah, I mean, this was a pioneer woman right here.
Right. And it's very necessary for us to, you know, give her that respect and know that coming out of enslavement, and the fact that when we came out of enslavement, we weren't just passive and just accepted things. We fought the entire time.
Right.
We fought during that era. We fought post that era. And so, you know, because there's this narrative that we, you know, were so docile in the time of enslavement and afterwards that we just didn't do much to stand up for ourselves, and we always needed aid from outsiders. We were always active. This is not a new struggle. This is not a new fight. We have always been brave enough to stand up for ourselves. There have always been those of us who stood in that trench and said, we will not take this. And they risked their lives, they risked their identities, they risked their access to any type of economic development and growth. And speaking on economic development and growth, one of the main reasons that Black people were being lynched in that era, in the Reconstruction era, was not because we were just walking around, you know, being lazy, not because we were being violent, not because we were whistling at white women.
Right.
It was because we, right after enslavement, started making money. We started businesses. We started communities, and it goes beyond Black Wall Street. It goes beyond Rosewood. We have Seneca Village in New York. We had, you know, beyond Auburn Avenue. Everywhere that you saw Black people, we were thriving.
Right.
And especially when we were thriving in the face of white people who couldn't become economically viable, they were threatened by that. because they
Right.
had been indoctrinated to the point to believe that, you know, at no point could Black people surpass them on any level. And when their beliefs, their core beliefs about themselves as, you know, human beings was being proven wrong by exactly what we were doing and accomplishing, they just couldn't take it. So they actually turned to mob culture, burning down towns, and murder, lynchings. Like they would throw parties to lynch people. And a lot of the times, the story behind the lynching is that, oh, some white woman was raped or some crap. And I would say 97% of the time, it was completely fabricated, right? Probably wasn't even a white person in sight at the time of the, like, go ahead.
So the last time I was, or the time before last that I was back, you know, visiting in the States, I went to the new, well, it was new, very new back then, the Lynch Memorial in Montgomery. And I visited the, you know, the monument and the museum itself. And when I tell you, if you have not been yet, I mean, please make it a mission to go. I mean, it will touch you. I witnessed, I mean, like what I saw there, what we saw there, the monument, you know, it's very beautiful. You know, how they displayed it, how they presented it, you know, and everything. But when you go inside and notice what these structures are, it's like pillars, you know, that's hanging. So many of them, right? And it's also plaques, you know, all the way around the wall, the whole area. And you will read them. They're victims. It's very small written, you know, writings, and is on categories under states, cities, you know, and things like that, where the lynchings took place. It's filled with names of people who have been lynched. And you go around to like the plaques, and it's, you know, it's accusation after accusation about, you know, this Black man was lynched by a mob for, you know, like you said, like whistling at a white woman, like with Emmett Till, or, you know, supposedly, you know, raping or kissing, or, you know what I mean, being found alone, didn't walk off the sidewalk, you know, when it's like, it's all kind of crazy stories that it seems unreal, but these are the ones that are documented. Can you just imagine even ones that are not documented? Even when you look current day and look at all of the cases of police brutality where it's not documented and it ended, you know, with a life being taken. And it's like, that was just so amazing though. But I know with Miss Ida B. Wells, she was calling it out, and she was calling it out early. And like you said, we have been, exactly. She, like, this was her job. Her the place where she worked was, you know, was it burned down, or I know it was destroyed. I don't know how they did it, but like she was constantly being threatened, you know, but she was exposing the truth of what was going on. And like you said, like, we've been fed up. People have, you know, we've had Black people throughout our history speaking out about it, talking about it. So, you know, when people look at, like, you know, even during civil rights, in the civil rights movement or the Black Power movement, Black Lives Matter today, these are not the first times in history that we see that. This is fresh. This woman was born into slavery. Right. She was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. Like, she was in there, you know what I mean? She was witnessing it. Born in Mississippi, also lived in Tennessee. She was working out of Tennessee and eventually moved up. Where is that? To Chicago? Most of them, moved up to Chicago. Right, But she's documenting all of this and exposing the ugly truths, just like, you know, you said with a lot of people today.
And so, talking about her documentation, she had like this weekly article pamphlet would come out called Southern Horrors, where she would talk about, through her investigative journalism, talk about the different lynchings that were happening around. And here's the thing about it being called Southern Horrors, because, like, I was just watching the scary movie last night. I was watching Friday the 13th Part 4, and I was like, this ain't scary. Like, this is just random. I was
Right.
like, why haven't they can't make a scary movie with Black people because our life is horror.
I'm
And
telling.
we make light of certain things and we go through certain we have comedy because sometimes that's the way that we actually deal and cope with all
Right.
the stuff that we're always facing. But
Right.
it's just like so many things were happening, and the fact that when we say she was risking her life, it's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not an exaggeration, it's not hyperbole. Her life was actually on the line just by her making note of this. And
Exactly.
you're familiar with the book Without Sanctuary, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for those of you who may not know, there's a book called Without Sanctuary that I've been meaning to buy, but every time I have the money, I'm like, do I
Yeah.
really do I really need this in my house? But I need it in my house, right?
Yeah.
So there was this white guy who was another journalist, and I can't remember the time period that he went around, but it was like it was the 1900s. I'm pretty sure it was the 20th century that he went around, and he had heard about during the lynchings they would take pictures of the bodies, and then
Right.
they would send them as postcards to family members who lived in other cities and other states, and they would gather around like it was an event, and they would have food cooking and their children out like it was a concert, and they were out lynching a Black body, right? And setting the
Smiling,
body on
smiling,
fire,
drinking
and,
lemonade. Yeah.
and also decapitating the men and keeping the genitals in like jars and preserving them and having it in their house. So this white guy,
Right.
he pretended to be like a sympathizer with these people, and he went around. He had heard these stories that these postcards and these jars of genitals existed, and he went around to different people in Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and the Carolinas and Kentucky, and the people would welcome him in. They were proud to show him the postcards, proud to show him all of the different things, the testicles that were in jars that they had cut off of Black men, and they allowed him to take pictures of the postcards, make copies of them, take pictures of the jars, and he created this book called Without Sanctuary and just showed how proud these people were of that history, that
Yep.
they weren't even trying to hide it. It was in their homes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go
You know,
ahead.
I often think about sometimes, just imagine someone, passed away because like you said, they kept these things like souvenirs. And I just always, I don't know why, it's certain areas, especially that I've driven through or something, like when I lived in I stayed in Snellville for a little bit, in Georgia. And you would drive down in some areas and people will have their door wide open with Confederate flags, over the mantelpiece and all kind of stuff. And, just proudly, it's a little disturbing, but I will always think like, imagine if we were to discover at some point in history, I'm sure that you're going to see somebody's like belongings, like somebody has a basement full of body parts or, and I don't know why it's a disturbing thought, but I'm like, I'm sure people see that sometimes, like somebody, they have to clear out a house or
Yeah.
something, and the wrong person, and and I'm sure they probably even passing this kind of stuff down the
Yeah.
family,
Because by the time the guy who wrote the book Without Sanctuary, it was
Mhm.
long beyond the time of lynching. So it was
Right.
the
They
descendants of these
saved it.
people. It was
Hmm.
saved as like memorabilia and was passed down from one generation to the next. And it might have been like 2 or 3 generations removed from the actual, occurrences of these things. And so it just shows you just how evil these things were, and just how the people, like we were talking earlier when we were saying people purposely misunderstanding Black Lives Matter,
Right.
because how can they do this to humans? Are they seeing it as a human? There's no way that you can do this to something that you identify with. You have to mentally check down and be like, okay, I can justify this because of this. And just tying, so she had the Southern Horrors, and that would come out weekly. And then she did more research and put out this pamphlet called The Red Record that went into even more details about the lynchings and the goings on. And so understanding this, because I put from Southern Horrors to BLM, right? This is our Monday morning quarterback, where we go back and look to see how this impact and the influence of what was happening then can impact what's happening now. So with us calling these modern day or these present day injustices and modern day lynchings, like, we need people that are documenting this. We need these, and it's good that we have the camera phones and that we have the social media and that we have all of this, because now we can guarantee that it won't be forgotten, because it's just too much media that has been covering it, and personal media. So just like, but it's also the fact that we have to give so much love and respect for Ida B. Wells, because now, as the reporters, our lives aren't so much in direct danger just by reporting the situations and the goings on of today. Whereas back then, it was like, literally, if you spoke out, you might die, right? And then nobody is going to come looking for you. Nobody is going to call for justice, because the people who are doing the things are the people that you would call to get justice served. And so that's what we're feeling now. So I just wanted to make sure that we put it into perspective about how long this thing has been going on, how long these struggles are, and how long we've been fighting back. We've been consistent, right? So we have just been passively accepting this, right? And so there are going to be some of us who, have other things going on. They have their family that they have to consider, that they can't risk their lives. So we understand that, but we have to give even more credit to the people who do and who have done, right? And also, Ida B. Wells wasn't like a vocal person who was, the speaker in front. And I wanted to also state that leadership is not only in one form. It's not always the eloquent speaker. It's not always the front person. There are different levels to how you lead and what you contribute. So she was a journalist, so she contributed in her journalism, right? And so appreciating her for creating that spotlight in the way now. And so we have so many varied aspects of these activists and advocates of people today that we have to pay respect to everybody who are doing these things. And that takes me into our deconstructed for today. And it's one of my favorite, pieces of media. So usually in deconstructed, in our first few episodes, we did movies and we talked about movies, but I always said that deconstructed is about media. It's movies, TV.
Let's get into the music. Yeah.
So this is Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Kick us off, since you are a Compton native. and what do you think about this album, and how does it still resonate today? It's 5 years old now. Isn't that crazy?
Man, time is flying by. 5 years. It's already been 5 years, but we still play it like it's brand new. So
it's still relevant, like it's brand new. Unfortunately,
sure. This beautiful piece of art, though. I mean, the artist. First of all, let's talk about the artist, Kendrick Lamar. One of my personal favorites. Like, he already claimed number one. As far as I'm a fan.
Right.
And we grew up in the same area. we went to the same, couple of the same elementary and middle schools. So I have people, even in the neighborhood who, very close to him, family members very close to him, but his artwork reflects that perspective, like just so beautifully from Good Kid, Mad City, which we're going to have to talk about that one too.
We will.
His perspective though, his like way of expressing the stories and like just the feelings, he takes on the characters that he portrays in his music. It's always a story being told. He's like a cross between like a Ice Cube and a Pac and with the intellectual and reflective parts in it, like a KRS-One. I don't know. It's like, I mean, his art, I just appreciate it so much. And I think it was like this album, To Pimp a Butterfly, was definitely very revolutionary, like especially in that time. When we're seeing a lot of this, and talking about it, a lot of us, we're coming of age, we're actually, we're a part of the conversation now. We're seeing this is happening to us, it's happening to our peers. And I think a lot of the songs and what he reflected, the messages he reflected in this piece of work, it gave us hope. I feel like it just gave us so much hope.
I remember when the first single came out, right? And I was like, okay, this is very different coming from Kendrick, like coming off of that Good Kid, Mad City vibe. And then all of the features after that, it was like, what is this song? Like, I Love Myself. And it was just like, okay, where's he going? Yes. But when you have the album and the full artwork, like this is one of those albums that I have to listen to from beginning to end, and then from beginning to end. And you can pick certain songs out, but it's so complete when you listen to it together, and it's so representative of everything that we're talking about today. Because as a Black man, right, when you're seeing yourself get murdered on TV and on people's camera phones, on social media, and then you also see yourself as a threat to you, because when you walk down the street, you may get tried by the person who looks just like you. Right. And then you also, it's so many layers to the weight of, being a Black man from my perspective in this country. Right. Yeah. And so he had two songs on there that were juxtaposed to one another. He had Hate, and he had You, and he had I. And You and I. You what became one of my favorite songs on the album, because he is going through what it feels like to be depressed, to blame himself for things that have happened in his family, for things that are happening in his community, for not being enough of what people expect him to be, for not doing enough, and just how that weighs on you. And then he's talking about how much he, has such a disdain for himself because he feels like he isn't doing as much as he should be. And then he made for, as a response to that feeling, like we as Black men, as Black people, have to be open with ourselves and feel our emotions and really look deeper and say, okay, I love myself. I love my brother. By me loving myself, when I look in the mirror and I not see my own enemy, then I will think twice about killing somebody that looks like me. And then when he goes deeper into it on Black of the Berry, when he say he's the biggest hypocrite of 2015, right? And say like, I'm crying over Trayvon, but then we shooting each other over colors.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But that's a lot of that, like what you just expressed, like the repressed emotions, they do cause conflict, you know what I mean, within yourself, and then how when you interact with other people who happen to, you know what I mean, when you're talking about you're in your community, interacting amongst those people around you, you're gonna, and you have these internal conflicts, you have these issues, with yourself and not being able to express yourself.
Right.
you're going to run into conflict. It's going to create other situations where, like I said, in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, we see a lot of this. And then add on top of that, actual, you have family issues. A lot of people walk around, we have dysfunctional families a lot of times. You can have, you know what I mean? And living in poverty would come with its own problems. Then you talk about outside forces, such like racism and, police brutality, discrimination, whatever you want to add on to that situation. It becomes too much. And we witness a lot of that, in our neighborhoods. We witness that, just the hostility, just unnecessary hostility, when it's like we have a bigger fight to be fighting together, but instead we're focusing on fighting each other because it's immediate. I can touch you. You can touch me. And a lot of times I think that for us as Black people, or just like oppressed people, I think can feel like the weight is too heavy, or we don't feel like it's like we kind of mystify the power, like of the, of whatever, whoever is oppressing us. We need to see how touchable they are and like see what our role can be in, what I mean, in solving our issues, solving our problems. But it's going to start with us.
Right. And I wanted to make sure that we highlighted this album because there is this narrative that Black people don't talk about the crime in our own communities.
Right.
And it is addressed on here just as much as the crime that is, done unjustly against us as well. We are constantly talking about these things and constantly working on them. I just need to demystify that narrative and just debunk that myth. Black people are always talking about Black on Black so-called violence and our disdain for it and how much we need to end it and what we need to do about it. But what I love about this album, though, is that he talks about the highs and the lows. He presents to you the you, and then right after you is everything's gonna be all right. Right?
Yes.
An anthem that still plays and still goes for today, like an encouraging song, a complexion.
Feel good.
A song like Complexion, where Rhapsody is on there and they're talking about what it is to be Black and what that goes into and what that mentality is and why we need to appreciate that aesthetic as well as the roots that go into that. And so it's just so many layers to this album that I would encourage anybody who hasn't listened to it to listen to it and then just think about current day situations and what the role of art is in this activism. What Kendrick Lamar did was similar to what Marvin Gaye did with what's going on, is create a soundtrack to what we're going through right now and something to be able to relate to. And there are so many other artists that are doing the same thing. And just like we said, Ida B. Wells was a journalist. She had her role to play, right? Everybody isn't going to be up making speeches or, the leader of an organization or even an organizer in that lane, right? But that doesn't demystify or invalidate their service. We need people in their place. We need people to do what it is that they do so that we can, put all the pieces to and that brings really into for the culture where we are really just talking about arts and activism, because I've seen criticism of artists like Kendrick, artists like J. Cole, very recently, artists like any of your, conscious rappers or anybody else. And people are critiquing the way that they are handling the current situations. And it just baffles me. What are your thoughts and have you seen these criticisms?
Oh, for sure. We just talked about it with a little bit with Beyonce with Black is King, and people are asking, or saying, I just wanted to see more, or she needs to do a little more, do this and that. And I, like you just said, as artists, that is them expressing, like that's them communicating, and they have a role. They can beautifully express, whether they're painting or singing or, whatever type of art form they're presenting to the world. It's communication. It's thought provoking, and
Right.
so everyone won't be a, I don't know, like who would you say? I'm thinking people expect,
So so
if you're going
people
to
who
talk
have been
about,
artists,
Mhm.
people who have been artists as well as activists, I would say like a Paul Robeson. Paul
Right.
Robeson, he sang opera, but I don't really think that his his activism was through his music, because the type of music that he did was opera. So in
Right.
order for him to speak, he had to speak outside of his music, because he couldn't put it in his lyricism because of the
Right.
type of music that he made. So
But
that
he
is
used
even
his
to our
platform.
point.
Yeah, he used his
So
platform
he
to
used his platform to speak out. Exactly. But they expect the artists who are not only using their platform to speak about these things within their lyrics, but to
Mhm.
also do things beyond that. And I just
Right.
ask people to go back and consider, like when Marvin Gaye made What's Going On. First of all, Berry Gordy didn't want him to record it, but Marvin Gaye knew his power in the label. So he
Mhm.
said, either you're going to take what I'm recording or you're not going to get anything. And so
Right.
he was like, look, we need a new Marvin album. We want to, people are going to want to hear you, period, your voice. But and Berry Gordy was convinced nobody is going to buy all of this serious talk. You make love
Interesting.
music. So
Yeah,
make
that's
love
interesting.
music. He was like, I'm not feeling love right now. Marvin was like, I'm not feeling the love right now. So I can't write about that. I got to write about how I'm feeling and what's going on. And so
Mhm.
the album came out, but I don't remember, like, of course, I don't remember it because I wasn't
Right.
there, but I don't
Right.
remember the talks of my parents or my grandparents talking about how, there was this discourse around Marvin Gaye not doing enough. The fact that he released the album and bucked against the system and went against the grain of how he usually does his art was revolutionary enough from what he brought to the table. So how is it that our artists today are being held to a different standard? It's the
Yeah.
same concept. They
Mhm.
are putting the lyrics in their music. They're
Yeah.
expressing their advocacy through their art, through what it is that they do best. When Martin
Yes.
Luther King makes a speech, that is what he does best. He's a preacher. Like he's a
Mhm.
preacher. He's a doctor. So that is his advocacy. That's the avenue that he could go down. When Malcolm X is making a speech, that is his lane.
Yes.
That is where he did his advocacy. That's how he expressed it, right?
Mhm.
And so you can't expect everybody to represent it in the same way. When Ida B. Wells wrote her pamphlet and her articles, that was how she was expressing her advocacy.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
we
but that's the thing with artists though, there a lot of times like fire to make you talk about it. And that is, like you said, that is advocacy. That is them, what I mean, doing something in the situation, like contributing something to the conversation, to what's going on. They're reflecting. Like we also got to think like they're human beings too. And especially with a lot of people talking about, well, they have a family, said they can't do this and that. These are human beings as well, and they are using their platforms. Especially nowadays, we see a lot of people on social media, but they'll get a lot of flack for speaking about certain things, like even being labeled as a conscious artist, as a conscious
right.
rapper. J. Cole and Kendrick and Rhapsody and whoever else, will get a lot of criticism for talking
Mhm.
about, what I mean? And that can also be a justification for some of them not getting a lot of airplay, a lot of
Yep.
airtime, because they're like, well, people don't want to hear that. People don't want to talk about this and that. We just want to escape And so we will get a lot of the, you know, more of the like filler music. Just, you know,
Right.
people just want
Because
to bop.
we had the earlier conscious rappers. I won't say the earlier, but I'll say like the middle, because like we had Public Enemy, you had Brand Nubian, you had KRS-One, you had so many different groups of that late 80, early 90 when it was actually popular to be conscious, and then it went out of style, right?
And so, Queen Latifah and all that.
Right, Queen Latifah and all those people. But then you had that little middle age where you had the Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Common, those types of people didn't get that much airplay. And when you are that artist who is like a J. Cole and Kendrick, who have been able to break the barrier of not being underground but being mainstream as well as conscious, then you have to actually have to appreciate that and appreciate the skill that goes into that, because what they're doing now is proving that this type of music can sell, just like what Marvin Gaye did. He proved to Berry Gordy that this type of music can sell, right? People are interested in hearing, you know, this reality. You know, everything doesn't have to be escapism. We need that as well, but we also need our art to reflect what it is that we're feeling, because we'll put that album on in that time. And so it's just necessary to be appreciative, especially with somebody like a Beyonce, who started her career not talking about any of this and actually was on the Super Bowl platform and came out with, you know, what was that? That was the 2000 Black Panther. She came out with, you know, the whole black, and we're not talking about Black Panther the movie, because this is before that. The Black Panther Party of Self-Defense. She came out with the black gloves, with the berets, with the leather jackets, with the whole thing, and on the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
When everybody in America is watching, and the police threatened not to even secure her concerts anymore. Like, she put herself on the line, right? And then we still find ways to criticize her, saying she's not doing enough. She's doing what she does in her lane of what she does.
I wonder though, is it because we always hear these talks? I'm always seeing people on my timeline, or, you know, just people that I know asking, you know, like, well, where is this leader? What is a leader? I think a lot of people are trying to define or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, trying to write in what a leader is or who a leader should be. Just because they have a platform, just because they have a certain amount of money, you know, then now you're supposed to be our leader. And I think, like I said, it goes back to the individual. What can you be doing while they're giving this platform? How can we, like, and like you said, you mentioned earlier, we have multiple organizations and, you know what I mean, and different people who do advocate and educate people, you know, on various topics. They know, they have the answers. All we have to do is pay them attention. Even like when we talk about with this with the artistry, you have plenty of artists who talk about things. They don't get the airplay like J. Cole and Kendrick, because like you said, they just were able to navigate. You know what I mean? They're able to do it in such a cool way to relate to people. But they're out there. People are out there.
Better point to what you're saying, though, is they might not get the airplay, but guess what doesn't matter anymore? Radio play. So if you actually wanted to support people, you would stream them.
Stream it. Yep.
You would go. Their streaming numbers would be higher than Drake, right? If you actually cared about the criticism that you're levying against the other people. If you actually wanted that to happen, you would buy the bots to stream their music to make the numbers go up if you actually cared. So that's the thing, where we don't even have to depend on the radio anymore to give us access to the music, because now if you listen to radio is like 3 months late now.
Yes.
And that's that's being generous. Sometimes radio is like 2 years late. Like radio was 2 years late on Lizzo.
Yeah.
People been bumping that song way before it hit the radio. And the thing is, we have so much power because it's direct to consumer information right now. Just like this show is being streamed on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, all at once. And if you don't tune in, then you just didn't tune in. And that's fine. Hopefully you'll find us later. But we're going to keep pushing, right? It doesn't mean just because you don't know it's out there or you're not watching that it doesn't exist. So before we, overly criticize, we have to look at the entire scope. And to your question about us always looking for a leader, I believe it comes down to two things. People always want a scapegoat because when somebody does put themselves in the position of the leader and then something goes awry, then you can put the blame on that person and you can absolve yourself, right? Also, the way we learn about Black history is leader-centric. Ella Baker said strong people don't need strong leaders. She was all about empowering people to become a leader in their own right in everything that they're doing, which is where my mindset about these things come from. And, she's like my spiritual mentor. And it's crazy because she died like in December of 86 and I was born in 87. So like just missed each other, right? On this planet. But I believe that, I take a lot of her methodology on into the work that we do with African Unity Initiative. We don't have a single leader. I'm the founder. I came up with the concept, but this is going to be happening long before, long after I'm here, right?
Yes.
That's how I'm building it to be sustainable. That's why on this platform, it's not just me, it's you and I. So we can balance each other off. We can give access to new perspectives. In the future, we will have guests onto the show to spotlight the work that they're doing. And the other shows that I'm doing, it's always a panel of people or somebody else that I'm spotlighting to show that there is work happening. There are people doing this. It is not, a small box of people that only have access to this information and who are actually implementing the work. There are so many people who are doing it. And so I hope you guys, go out of your way to find them and support them and make sure that these things are, still taking place. But I just wanted to make sure that, and I'll give you the last word on this, that we don't over criticize our artists. We need the painters. We needed the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was artists, meaning painters and sculptors. There were poets. There were, singers. There were musicians, instrument players, theater actors, writers, all types of art that filled in what we call the Harlem Renaissance. And all of those pieces of art still maintain significance to this day because that was their activism. That was their advocacy. That's how they displayed it. It's not going to be displayed the same. And we have to appreciate and not denigrate everything. Like, it's just annoying. You finish us off.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely feel the same way about that. And in recent discussions, the most recent discussions with certain songs, certain artists, and people criticizing them on what not to express or how to express themselves. And I think a lot of times, like you said, we put in a little bit too much focus on on these individuals who are expressing themselves. And like you said, like we talked about all throughout this episode with artists, highlighting the artists who do the work, who do put our everyday struggles in their art, for us to consume and be inspired by. Like, we can do a lot more to support them. So if you're not entertained, you don't want to be entertained by certain musicians, certain forms of art, you can always click on something else, support the ones you do.
Right.
Very important. Exactly. You want to change the narrative. We have more control than ever right now. And so,
I love that.
It's on us.
support what you want to support and just don't even mention the stuff you don't. There's
Don't
no
talk
reason to even talk
Nope.
about things negatively unless it is such an impact directly negatively on us that we have to address it, right? But most of the times, if you just disagree with something, tune out of it. Like it just is that easy. You have control
I guess social media makes it easy to chime in on any and everything. You can't resist. People can't resist commenting on everything. So I think that, you know, we're seeing just a lot of different opinions on everything. Right. You really can, but people act like they don't want to resist. You know, it's like, well, I have a voice. I can say this. But that's a
decision.
Yes.
That's an intention, right?
Right.
It's not forced on you to see social media. When I don't want to see Black people get killed, I don't touch the video. Right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's all about that. So we always end the show with Actualize African Unity. So African Unity Initiative is a nonprofit organization. We are actually on the ground doing work in communities across the African diaspora. So if you want to be involved and you want to get more information, you know, follow us on all of our social medias at African Unity. We keep it simple so that you can find us on all platforms using the exact same handle. And find us at africanunity.us. The us is not for, you know, United States. It's for, it represents us as a people. So africanunity.us and at African Unity. If you want more information about what we do as an organization and how you can get involved, whether that be just volunteering or involved financially, there's a membership program that is in the works where you will be able to support us at just $1 a day that will, you know, support all of our communities worldwide. And Michelee, just let the people know where they can find you and how they can support your work.
Okay, thank you. Passing the mic to me. You can find me at Michelee the Maker on social media, and you can find me on my website at www.mishmashworld.com to find my handmade goods. But yeah, that's about it. I definitely support us, you know, like and share and subscribe. You know, for our show, we're coming at you at least how many days of the week is 4 days?
4 days a week.
4 days a week. Yeah, you can tune back in, you know, and find our videos any other time. If you missed the live stream or you only got part of it,
right,
you can always go back and watch the episodes on the YouTube channel.
So, and soon we'll be clipping out segments of the show so that you can see the individual segments. It'll probably start next week as soon as we get these videos edited. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, you know, we love you. We want you to come away from these talks with, you know, an appreciation for listening, with how to engage in, you know, conversations, even if you disagree, you know,
right.
Counsel culture, not cancel culture. Yes. You know, understanding.
I love that.
Yeah. So we love you guys. We'll see you at the same time tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.